My sister sabotaged my business to pay for her lavish wedding, then demanded I forgive her. I'm still reeling from what happened, and I don't even know where to begin. My sister, Clara, has always been the golden child in our family. Everything she did was celebrated, everyone indulged, while I, the older sibling, was often overlooked. It wasn't malicious, exactly, more like a collective blind spot for anything I accomplished. I learned early on to be self-sufficient, to rely on myself, and to find my own successes, largely independent of my family's recognition. This fostered a deep sense of independence, but also a quiet resentment that I've tried to bury for years that I've always been passionate about baking. It started as a hobby in high school, a way to de-stress and express my creativity. Over the years, it grew into something more. I took culinary classes, honed my skills, and eventually, after years of saving every penny and working multiple part-time jobs, I managed to open my own small bakery, Sweet Surrender. It was my dream come true, a cozy little shop with a loyal customer base and a reputation for delicious, unique pastries. I poured my heart and soul into that business. Every early morning, every late night, every aching muscle was a testament to my dedication. I wasn't just selling cakes, I was selling joy, comfort, and a little piece of my passion. The bakery was thriving, and I was finally in a place where I felt truly secure and happy. Clara, on the other hand, had always gravitated towards a more extravagant lifestyle. She loved designer clothes, fancy restaurants, and exotic vacations. She had a knack for spending money, and while she held a decent job in marketing, it never quite seemed to cover her lifestyle. Our parents often helped her out, which was another source of quiet frustration for me. I never asked for financial help from them, even when I was struggling to keep the bakery afloat in its early days. I believed in earning my own way, and I saw their constant bailing out of Clara as enabling her irresponsibility. About a year ago, Clara announced her engagement to David, a seemingly charming but somewhat bland man from a well-to-do family. The engagement was swift, and almost immediately, Clara began planning the wedding of her dreams, a no-expenses spared affair that she expected our parents, and implicitly, me, to contribute to. The venue was a historic manor house, the dress was a custom-made designer gown, and the guest list quickly swelled to over 200 people. Our parents, predictably, were thrilled and offered to cover a significant portion. I, however, was in a different position. My savings were tied up in the bakery, in new equipment, ingredients, and the salaries of my small but dedicated team. I offered to bake the wedding cake as my gift, explaining that I couldn't contribute financially to the lavish extent she was envisioning. Clara was visibly annoyed. She made a few snide remarks about my small-time business and how it was hardly a contribution compared to what she was getting from our parents. I brushed it off, reminding myself that this was Clara being Clara. I still committed to making the most beautiful, delicious wedding cake she could imagine. I spent weeks designing it, researching new techniques, and sourcing the finest ingredients. It was going to be a masterpiece, a multi-tiered creation adorned with delicate sugar flowers and intricate details, a testament to my love for her, despite our differences. The wedding planning continued, growing more extravagant with each passing week. Clara kept complaining about budget shortfalls, even with our parents pouring money into it. She'd call me, not to ask for advice or share excitement, but to subtly hint at needing financial assistance. I gently reiterated my position. My gift was the cake. She'd respond with sighs and comments about how some people have more important things than just their own little shops. These digs stung, but I tried to remain calm and focused on my business. Then, about 3 months before the wedding, things took a turn. I started noticing unusual activity on my bakery's social media pages. Strange, negative comments appeared on my posts, not just about the quality of my products, but also questioning my hygiene standards and even my business ethics. These were vague at first, easily dismissible as a few disgruntled customers, but they became more frequent and more pointed. Reviews on various online platforms, which had always been overwhelmingly positive, started dropping. 5-star ratings were replaced with 1-star venom, accusing me of using cheap ingredients, being rude to staff, and delivering stale products. First, I thought it was a coordinated attack from a competitor, though I couldn't imagine who. My bakery was small, local, and didn't pose a threat to larger establishments. I redoubled my efforts, reaching out to customers, asking for feedback, and trying to understand what was happening. My staff, equally bewildered, assured me they hadn't noticed anything amiss. We were all working harder than ever, maintaining our usual high standards. The negative comments and reviews began to affect my business significantly. Orders started to drop, especially for custom cakes, which were a significant portion of my income. My regular customers, confused and concerned by the online chatter, began to inquire, some even hesitantly asking if the accusations were true. I tried to reassure them, to explain that it was a smear campaign, but without concrete evidence, it was hard to counter. My revenue plummeted, and soon, I was struggling to pay my suppliers and my staff. The stress was immense, almost crippling. I was losing sleep, my appetite vanished, and I felt a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach. My dream business was slowly being choked point one evening. After another particularly devastating day of cancelled orders and scathing reviews, I was frantically searching online, trying to find any clue about who was behind this. I was looking through an obscure local forum, a place where people often shared recommendations and opinions on local businesses. Hidden deep within a thread about wedding planning, I found it. A series of posts from an anonymous user with a brand new account, detailing fabricated horror stories about sweet surrender. The tone was venomous, the details precise enough to sound credible to someone who didn't know the truth. But what truly made my heart drop was a specific detail, a particular, custom order I had done for a friend of Clara's a few months back, mentioned in a way only someone intimately familiar with my business or my sister circle would know. I felt a cold dread wash over me. It couldn't be. It absolutely could not be Clara, my own sister. But the suspicion, once planted, began to sprout. I started looking back, replaying conversations, analyzing her behavior. Her resentment towards my independence, her constant need for money, her snide remarks about my business. It all started to coalesce into a horrifying picture that I decided I needed proof. I knew Clara was meticulous about her online presence, but also surprisingly careless when she thought no one was looking. I remembered she had an old laptop, rarely used, that she sometimes left at our parents' house. I concocted a flimsy excuse to visit, claiming I needed to borrow a specific baking pan. While I was there, I casually mentioned needing to check my email on a larger screen and asked if I could use her old laptop since mine was acting up. She was preoccupied with wedding invitations and waved me off, telling me to use whatever I wanted. My heart was pounding as I opened the laptop. It was slow, clunky, but it worked. I navigated through her browser history, my hand shaking. And there it was. Dozens of searches for how to leave anonymous bad reviews, fake social media accounts, damage business reputation online. And then, even more damning, direct links to the very forums and review sites where the smear campaign was taking place, all accessed from the anonymous account I had seen. There were draft messages, written and then deleted, complaining about my lack of financial contribution to her wedding and expressing a desire to make her see what real struggle feels like. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a competitor, it was my own sister. She was actively, maliciously, systematically destroying my business. Not because I had wronged her, but because I hadn't given her money for her extravagant wedding. Because I had chosen to invest in my own dream instead of funding her fantasy. I copied everything, every link, every screenshot, every piece of evidence, onto a USB drive. I left the laptop exactly as I found it, my mind a whirlwind of shock, betrayal, and incandescent rage. How could she? How could my own sister do something so cruel, so destructive, so utterly devoid of empathy? I didn't confront her immediately. I needed time to process, to calm down, to figure out my next move. The wedding was now less than 2 months away. My business was on the brink of collapse, orders were at an all-time low, and my staff were starting to look for other work. I had to act, not just for myself, but for the people who relied on me. I first spoke to my closest friend, Sarah, who had been with me since the very beginning of Sweet Surrender. She was horrified, and her immediate reaction was one of fury. "You have to expose her," she urged. "You can't let her get away with this." Then, I spoke to a lawyer, a family friend whom I trusted implicitly. I laid out all the evidence, the screenshots, the declining sales figures, the emotional toll it was taking. He listened gravely, confirming that I had a strong case for defamation and economic interference. He advised me on the legal steps I could take, but also cautioned me about the family fallout. The family fallout was what I dreaded most. My parents, who had always championed Clara, would be devastated. They would likely try to mediate, to minimize Clara's actions, to push for reconciliation. But how could I reconcile with someone who had deliberately tried to ruin my life's work? I decided on a course of action. I wouldn't go to the police or file a lawsuit immediately. Not yet. I would confront Clara, but not privately. I would confront her in front of our parents because I wanted them to see, unequivocally, the truth about their golden child. I arranged a family dinner, ostensibly to discuss the final wedding plans. Clara arrived, radiating her usual self-importance, oblivious to the storm brewing. Our parents were there, beaming, talking about the wedding, how beautiful everything would be. I sat quietly, my heart a hammer against my ribs, waiting for the right moment. After dinner, when everyone was relaxed with coffee, I cleared my throat. "There's something important I need to discuss," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Everyone looked at me, a little confused, a little annoyed that I was disrupting the celebratory mood. "Clara," I began, looking directly at her, "I know what you've been doing." Her smile faltered. A flicker of fear, or perhaps just irritation, crossed her face. "What are you talking about?" she said, feigning innocence. "I'm talking about the smear campaign against Sweet Surrender," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "The fake reviews, the anonymous posts, the deliberate attempts to destroy my business." Clara scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would I do something like that?" She looked at our parents, appealing for their support. "She's being paranoid. She always is when her business gets a bit slow." "Because I wouldn't give you money for your wedding," I stated, the words cutting through the air. "Because you resented that I invested in my own dream instead of funding yours." Our parents were looking from me to Clara, confusion turning to concern. My father finally spoke. "What is this, darling? What proof do you have?" I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my USB drive, connected it to the television, and began projecting the evidence. Screenshot after screenshot flashed across the screen. The anonymous forum posts, the scathing reviews, Clara's browser history, the draft messages. I laid out everything, calmly and methodically, explaining each piece of evidence, connecting the dots. The room was silent, save for the hum of the television. Clara's face, initially defiant, slowly drained of color. She looked trapped, exposed, cornered. Our parents, who had been so quick to dismiss my claims, watched in stunned disbelief, their faces etched with a growing horror. When I finished, the silence was deafening. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father looked utterly heartbroken. Clara finally broke the silence, her voice a thin, shaky whisper. It wasn't supposed to go this far," she stammered. I just wanted to make a point. You were being so selfish, not helping with my wedding. It was just a few bad reviews. They wouldn't have ruined your business." "A few bad reviews?" I snapped, the years of suppressed resentment finally boiling over. "My business is on the verge of collapse, Clara. My staff are losing their jobs. My dream, everything I've worked for, is being destroyed because of your petty jealousy and your insatiable desire for an expensive party." My mother, sobbing, turned to Clara. "How could you, Clara? How could you do this to your sister?" Clara, cornered and with nowhere left to run, finally broke down. She cried, not out of remorse, I suspected, but out of self-pity and the shame of being caught. She tried to apologize, mumbled something about being stressed with the wedding and not thinking clearly. But her words rang hollow. My father, usually the more reserved one, spoke with a gravitas I hadn't heard before. "Clara, what you did is unforgivable. This is not just a few bad reviews. This is a deliberate act of sabotage, a betrayal of your own sister." The evening ended in chaos. Clara was hysterical, our parents were devastated, and I felt a strange mix of vindication and profound sadness. The family dynamic had shattered, irrevocably. In the days that followed, the repercussions were swift. My parents, in a rare display of true anger towards Clara, told her they would no longer be funding her lavish wedding. They said they would pay for a small, intimate ceremony, but the grand affair was off. David, her fiancé, who had been conspicuously quiet throughout the revelation, now started questioning everything. He had always seemed a bit oblivious to Clara's manipulative tendencies, but seeing the extent of her deceit and the potential legal ramifications shook him. Clara, in a last-ditch effort to salvage her wedding and her reputation, actually came to my bakery a few days later. It was early morning, and I was alone, preparing dough. She looked disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed. "Please," she pleaded, "you have to forgive me. Tell everyone it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you're retracting your statements. My wedding is ruined. David is reconsidering. My life is falling apart." I looked at her, at the woman who had tried to destroy everything I had built, and felt nothing but a cold emptiness. Forgive you? I repeated, my voice flat. You deliberately tried to ruin my business, Clara. You attacked my livelihood, my passion, everything I poured my heart into. You thought you could just apologize and everything would be fine. You think I can just wave a magic wand and make all those negative reviews disappear? Make my customers trust me again? Make up for the lost income, the sleepless nights, the sheer terror I felt watching my dream die? But it was just a mistake, she insisted, tears streaming down her face. I was just so stressed. I just wanted my perfect wedding. Your perfect wedding, I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips, at the expense of my entire life. No, Clara, there will be no forgiveness, not now, maybe not ever. And there will be no retraction. The truth is out. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it. She continued to plead, to cry, to try and manipulate me, but I was unyielding. I told her to leave, and that if she didn't, I would call the police. She eventually left, defeated. Since then, the wedding has been significantly scaled back, a shadow of Clara's original vision. I heard through my mother that David is seriously reconsidering the marriage, shaken by Clara's vindictiveness and deceit. My parents are still reeling, trying to come to terms with the reality of their golden child. They've offered to help me financially with the bakery, a gesture I appreciate but haven't fully accepted yet. I told them I would consider it once I had a clear plan to rebuild. Rebuilding is going to be incredibly difficult. The damage to Sweet Surrender's reputation is severe. I'm working tirelessly, trying to counteract the negative reviews with new marketing strategies, reaching out to old customers, offering incentives. It's a slow, uphill battle. Some customers have come back, showing their loyalty, but many are still hesitant. The financial strain is immense, and I'm taking on extra shifts, working longer hours, just to keep the lights on. But I'm sharing this because I feel so lost and angry. My sister, my own flesh and blood, tried to destroy me out of pure spite and greed. How do you move past something like that? How do you forgive someone who has shown such a blatant disregard for your well-being and your future? I don't know if our family will ever recover, or if I will ever fully recover from this betrayal. I also don't know if I will ever be able to trust her again, or even look at her without seeing the person who almost ruined everything I held dear. I'm exhausted, emotionally drained, and facing a monumental task to bring my business back from the brink. Any advice on how to navigate this impossible situation, both personally and professionally, would be greatly appreciated.